I'm going to do something similar to the right-hand egg, which has this sort of chevron stripe across the center and then some polka dots. In order to do this, I'm going to need to draw a shape similar to the one that's shown in the upper right-hand portion. It's just one I did a minute ago. I'm going to leave it there because I wanted you to be able to visualize what we're doing, and when I say make sure it hangs off the edge, I really mean that. I've got currently the color of my fill set to something other than what the color of the egg is. And I've got the border or the stroke along the outline of this set to 5 because I really want this to show up as I go. Every time I click, I'm going to get a point. If you click and drag, you get curved points. We're going to do those later, but for now I want an angular point. So I'm going to start off the bottom. I'm starting with the bottom right egg here, and I'm going to do this up and down motion with the pen tool to get the beginning of the chevron shape. I want to hang off the edge here on the right, and then I'm going to continue along doing that chevron shape until I have come off the same edge that I started from. I'm going to go back up to the very first point I put in. The pen tool temporarily turns into a pen tool with a little 0 beside it. That's the way it's showing me that it'll create a closed shape, and that is what I need here. Alright, so I have a closed shape. I have a copy of the egg, and I do actually literally want a copy. So I'm going to delete my original chevron, and yours should look something like this, where you have 2 different egg shapes that you're using for this one, and you have the chevron. Select the chevron and the egg that it's layered on top of, and you're going to go up to the top and you're going to choose the intersect option. This will trim off the parts of it that hang off the edge. It'll get rid of the upper and the lower part, and it will only leave you with the chevron bit in the middle, and that's what we wanted. We're going to come up to the top. We're going to position it correctly over the duplicate version of our egg that we had, and then we're going to make it some color other than gray, because, you know, Easter eggs are not gray. So I've made mine turquoise. Still doesn't look awesome over a gray egg, but it is a beginning, and I will do something different for that one. So I'm going to make this one bright yellow. Doesn't seem like a great, I don't know. I'm going to pick a green, sort of a medium to dark green, and I may go a little bit softer with my blue to increase the contrast there. And now I have to consider what else it needs. The chevron shape that I'm working from could also have a border if I wanted it to. So I could give it, I don't know, hot pink as an edge, especially since I'm going to end up edging the egg later. That's okay. Let's give this like a 6. And it looks wacky where it hangs off, but I'm going to put a framer border on the egg itself. That'll address part of that issue, and it looks nice on the upper and lower. And I could also consider whether or not I want to add one additional element of a central line that goes through this chevron, and I think that might look interesting. The original that I was inspired by for this one had it, and that makes it a good option. Now, the problem I'm seeing is that when I try to draw, it keeps going. It's trying to create a closed shape. It really wants to be a closed shape, so it's giving me this funky effect. If you want to close the object, you're going to double click, and I've just created 2 points that I didn't want because I didn't double click soon enough. So I kept drawing and it was acting weird. So I can come to the end of the line with the white arrow, delete, but select any points that I don't want and delete those. I'm going to come back to the line that I drew, and the trick here becomes selecting it when it is layered on top of something else. So sometimes you have to move things, or it becomes easier to select things if you move them than it would otherwise. I'm going to pick I could pick a color from my other object, and sometimes that can be helpful. But I just picked an orange from the swatch panel, and I'm there. I'm not done with this yet. I do want to do some more to it, but that's coming along. If I wanted to create white polka dots like the original one had, or some other color polka dot, I can do that, or even better, I can grab a dot from the other object using the subset tool and create however many copies that I want. I don't think I want them to be white. I think I like the idea of yellow better. And I'll just keep clicking on them The trick again is becoming that selecting them on top of this is really not a lot of fun because of the way this is set up. So they're definitely going to be easier if they're not falling within that same range that the chevron is. That is currently the issue. And they're also part of the other egg, as you can see here. So when you copy out of a different object, you do run the risk of having something that gets grabbed every time that group does. So I temporarily ungrouped it. I'm going to regroup the left-hand egg. I'm going to zoom back in. So just draw a new dot would be my recommendation because that's a pain. And know as well that my chevron is challenging because it's reading the original shape every time I click on it, even though the original shape is not currently visible. Just know that it's technically there, and that presents certain challenges also. I am going to move my chevron down until I am pretty much done with all of the other decorating of this egg. And I'm alt dragging to create these copies. Alright, so that is close enough in terms of the polka dots. I'm going to move this back over. I know that the chevron is going to be underneath it, but moving it over is helpful. And then I'm going to move the chevron back into position. And then there's one last thing I have to do to finish this egg up. If you didn't like any of the polka dot positions, I'm not crazy about a few of them. The chevron's now sort of going to be in the way of a lot of that. So do know that moving it back down is probably the easiest option for the edits. And that's better. And I would just tweak it however much I needed to, moving it up and down. I need to do a couple more things before I'm officially finished. It's actually a little Wonder Woman-y somehow. I don't quite know why, but it is. All right. I have another copy of that egg that I'm going to use for the border. And it's just one that I had stuck down at the bottom. So I'm going to drag it up. I'm going to position it ultimately in what's going to be over, but it's not over right now. I'm going to set the fill to 0. And I'm going to set the border to 10. And it's going to show up as a big thick black border that's not quite in the right place. But it's doing what I want it to do, which is, and I'm using the bring forward option to bring this in front of all the other elements, and then I'll make it whatever color it needed to be, which I think probably needs to be kind of a dark green to go with the design of the other eggs. So I now have the polka dotted one and I have the dark green one. There are a bunch of steps to get there, but the basic idea is fairly straightforward. So outline eggs, the very last part that goes on there with no fill and only the thicker stroke. The chevron bit layers over the rest of them, and then it's the egg with the polka dots. So that piece is my second one. I would group it all for egg number 2, and then for egg number 3, I'm going to go with the stripe approach for that one. And for the stripe, we could use the compound path option, but it's a little cumbersome, to be honest with you. It's a lot better in Illustrator than it is in here. I'm going to use the pen tool to draw a striped line, or a line that curves around this item once. And to get a curve point, I'm going to come back. I'm going to stop temporarily and delete what I've got going here, and I want to talk about this just a little bit because we haven't talked about it a lot. I have the pen tool. If I click, I get a corner point, and everything is really angular and jagged. If, however, I click and drag, what I have right now is a point and a set of Bezier handles, not a path yet. Until I put in a second point, I don't have a path at all. And for my second one, I now have a set of handles, and I can see the line segment. Keep in mind that pretty much you want to drag in a consistent direction, meaning I'm going sort of clockwise. I'm not going circular, but I'm going clockwise. I'm dragging from left to right consistently. And then now I'm going to drag from up to down and then, so forth. But I'm consistently going in a direction. If I add a modifier key, I'm able to change from corner to curve or vice versa. I'm not going to do that now. I'm going to edit this a little bit later on. I want you to see how it works. So I'm just going to keep on doing the click and drag approach to create these elements. And I could use the shape primitive to, rather the compound path, to fix this for me in a way, but it creates other problems. So I'm actually going to edit this until the left and the right hand sides of it correctly match up with my egg, so that you can see what that option looks like. All right, so how do I do that? A couple things. I'm going to need to zoom in so that I'm really looking specifically at the left and the right hand sections that I'm trying to do the edits on. I will need the white arrow for this. The points that I'm dealing with will need to be right on the edge of my egg shape. And it can be easier to do what I'm trying to now if you don't have a fill turned on. You'll need a stroke or a border, but not a fill. So I've turned off my white fill so that I can really see this. I'm going to select the upper point first. It's right on that edge. And I'm going to click on disconnected. The three choices I have are mirrored, disconnected, or asymmetric for the curve points. And disconnected is what I need it to be, because I need it nice and soft and curvy on the inside, and I need it to be able to split at a sharp corner on the outside edge. And I'm going to do the same thing with the bottom one. That one also needs to be disconnected. And I'm going to grab that other handle and I'm going to pull it up and position it until this starts to match. Now keep in mind I have a stroke turned on here, and I have a really thick stroke too. With a thinner stroke, it becomes much easier to tell how well you are or are not matching the edge of your egg. And I'm going to have a thick border on here later, so this doesn't have to be perfect. What I've got now works pretty well. I'm going to go over to the right hand edge and do something very similar. So the points need to be on the path, on the outline first, and then disconnected, not asymmetric. And then I'm going to pull the one down to split it and do the same thing with the bottom one, except that time I'm going to go up. And I've got that. So I've now got that piece. I'm going to stop here and start, because I think this particular video has gotten a little long, but that is where I'm going to be starting from in the next section.